When you're natural, you have to do everything you can to look as big as possible. Even if you're relatively strong and carry a lot of muscle mass, you may still look smaller than others who have better proportions. In particular, those who are focused on developing the outer extremities of their bodies, not just having big chests and legs, which you might get if you're obsessed with the big three. And truth be told, many elite powerlifters have high fat-free mass indexes, often comparable to natural bodybuilders, but don't look the part because of glaring muscular weaknesses that destroy their symmetry. You can't just be big, you need to be big in the right places. Number 1, get yoked. Focus on your traps and neck above all else. You need thickness around the head because that's the first thing that people are gonna see. Even if you're jacked from the face down, if your traps are flat and you have a pencil neck, you immediately look way smaller, especially in clothes. It's one of the reasons why naturals who get shredded and also lose their yoke look sickly, despite the rest of their bodies looking better than ever. So maintaining this area on a cut should take high priority. And of course, when you're bulked up, the extra fat combined with the muscle makes you look much leaner and intimidating. For the face, you never want your neck narrower than your cheeks. This creates what I've coined as the lollipop effect. Instead, you want to look like a thumb. At a minimum, your neck should be level with your cheeks, but the wider the better, which also affects how your head looks like from the side and back profiles, as your head shape appears less nerdy, as if it's one connected mass, more squared off looking, rather than rear head protrusion with no support underneath, like a freaking alien, less of a mushroom effect. You want a thick stem so it all blends seamlessly, okay? Especially if you're bald or you're rocking a short haircut, which is also a hack for making you look more yoked. Drawing your attention downwards, okay? You never want this big hunk of mass distracting from your yoke. So it also avoid big hairdos for that reason. So even if you're not the biggest guy, if you have a big neck, you automatically look bigger. Think of non-bodybuilders like Corey Taylor, Bill Goldberg, Will Rattel, who's a freaking beast, Channing Tatum, and all the pro wrestlers and UFC fighters. Their well-developed necks are the sole reason why they look tougher and oftentimes better than many other lifters who carry 10 pounds more muscle. Yeah, because again, the neck is one muscle you can't hide, and it's the very first thing you see. So the absolute minimum standard is having a 1-to-1 ratio with your upper arms and neck, not forearms, calves, and neck, which I've seen recommended for aesthetics. No, if anything, your neck should be 1 to 2 inches greater than your arm size if you really want to take it to the next level, especially if you'll lose some of that size in a deficit anyway. Like, I genuinely believe that most lifters with 16-inch arms can absolutely spot 18-inch necks. It's 100% realistic. I've seen this happen hundreds of times back in 2016, 2017. Average lifters literally had this ratios. It wasn't uncommon at all, because the neck actually responds very well to training and has high progression potential. It's not stubborn like your calves. That's the beautiful part. Within max 1 to 2 years of training, you'll probably have all the mass you'll ever need. So if you want to learn more about neck training, check out my original neck training fundamentals video, and of course my collaboration with Scott Herman, the OG, which are still among the best on this platform. The only thing I potentially change is to do 2 sets per exercise instead of 3 or 4 sets, and to slightly slow down your tempo. It doesn't have to look like you're spasming, okay? Probably favoring the 15 to 20 rep range as opposed to 25 to 33, but that protocol still works too. If you're running a body part split, I like hitting neck alongside my calves at the end of a leg workout, or even at the end of a back day. For full body, I always preferred hitting neck on the off days, and for upper lower, on freaking lower days, since I feel it pairs well with your deadlifts. Train it twice a week, but to be honest, 3 times a week is probably better because it recovers really fast. Better than most muscles, including the side delts. And most importantly, you want to train neck flexion and neck extension. The side work is optional. For the front, the best exercise is the basic plate neck curl on a flat bench. It doesn't have to be an incline. And for the back, the classic neck extension with a harness is unbeatable. I like it with a weight plate and loading pin for convenience, or clipping it to a cable tower for a smooth setup. You're less likely to get zingers this way, where you feel sort of tweaked and you have trouble turning your head. Although you can kind of expect that if you're new to neck training. And as far as the traps are concerned, especially the upper traps, they're obviously connected to the neck, which are also built indirectly through neck extensions. And it's a bigger area with unbelievable growth and strength potential. So the higher up your traps go towards your ears, the more enhanced you'll look. They can't be flat. They need to be bumpy mountains that protrude even when you're not flexing. You shouldn't have to do this weird Geodude pose to look like you lift. Most lifters don't isolate their traps. Or if they do so with the bare minimum effort and weights, neglecting high-level anecdotes and, funny enough, trusting those who aren't even yoked. Then they complain about their bad genetics, or that only steroid users have big traps because higher androgen receptor sensitivity. That's all cope. I already cracked the code 10 years ago with my yoke training formula and naturally enhanced philosophy. I wasn't wrong, and my audience never had trouble building big traps. It's why my channel blew up. The advice worked. The God-honest truth is that the science-based crowd struggled the most here because they're afraid of ego lifting or looking like a bro douchebag, which my man Atlas Power Shrugged masterfully pointed out in this yoke training video. Be sure to watch it because it's an absolute gem that I 100% approve of. What it boils down to is that guys think doing slow and controlled, lightweight dumbbell and cable shrugs will get them big traps, or that relying on rows or Kelso shrugs is enough. Which, don't get me wrong, they're all great exercise, but it doesn't work in the real world. Maybe for the mid and lower traps, but not the upper traps. I've yet to freaking see it. I did that as well back in the day and it failed miserably. Traps used to be one of my worst muscles until I started specializing with the methods I'm sharing. Heavy overloads and taking my strength to a level that I didn't even think was freaking possible. First of all, for the most basic of standards, which Bill Starr talked about in the 90s, if you bench 315, you need to shrug at least 500 pounds. I don't care how you do it, what bar or machine is used, but it starts there. And no, it doesn't have to be super strict form, just get that weight up. You can bend your legs momentum and you don't have to hold it at the top. Just the sheer weight pulling down on your traps and even the fast eccentric is enough to cause some serious damage. Power shrugs are probably superior for that exact reason. The pulling forces are intensified in the most hypertrophic portion, the bottom. In fact, if you did nothing but hold the weight for time, that in itself would grow your traps. It's isometric weighted stretching at maximum length, which is why super elite deadlifters and strongman competitors almost always have big traps despite not emphasizing them. But they're also pulling 800 to 900 pounds, which is off the table for pretty much all of us. But what if I told you that you didn't need to get that strong to begin with, or more specifically, that your lower body doesn't need to match your traps' strength? Those are two separate things. It's like comparing grip strength to back strength on rows. Why be bottlenecked? The reality is, if you did stupid heavy farmer walks, high handle trap bar deadlifts, block pulls, or rack pulls, which of course do not feature any shrugging component, just holding heavy ass weight, then that in itself would bypass your lower body weakness and allow for maximum mechanical tension and biasing of the upper back and traps. Now, will they have the best carryover to pulls off the floor? No. But who gives a fuck if your goal is to get yoked? The range of motion is irrelevant. Your traps are doing the same thing, resisting that weighted stretch overload, but now your spinal erectors and glutes aren't holding them back anymore. I don't care what anybody says. This works, and I've always stood my ground here, including to what I believe is the king of trap builders, the rack pull above the knee. Oh yeah, I'm bringing them back. We've gone full circle, bros, because let me tell you, to this day, nothing I've ever done was as stimulating as those, and my traps were bigger in my older videos. So anyone who talks smack can buzz off. because I've gotten stronger at everything else. It's difficult to beat this deep tension. It is the one exercise that takes your traps to total stretch failure with the highest imaginable weight. Now, does it look weird with those few inches of range of motion? Maybe so. But the holding factor is present regardless of pulling height. And when you hold the weight at the top, which is what you should do, really feeling that pulling down, resisting the weight of stretch, that is when you get the best results. So the time under tension actually matters here. We want to deeply fatigue the traps. Even building up to your work weight is a workout in itself. It's more stimulus than you'd ever get from straight deadlifts. But I recommend one heavy top set of 5 to 8 reps. That's all you'll need. And I'd start with the basic standard of repping 700 pounds, or around 7 plates per side, which is a bit less. That might do it for you, especially if the bar is set right above the kneecap, not necessarily mid-thigh, although I don't have a problem with that either for building the traps. But if it's right above the knee and you're actively trying to hinge with your shoulders in front of the barbell, it's harder than you think, rather than leaning back and squatting the weight up. But again, I keep having to say this, that it doesn't matter what's going on at the torso level. And when you do it this way, the stretch is maximized. So you can go much heavier. So you don't need any range of motion. If your arms are long and your traps are being pulled on, you're good. To reference my classic example, it's why farmer walks is so effective for building the traps, as all strongman competitors can attest to. It's similar, just that you're walking, which features a grip component, thus reducing overloading potential. Yet these guys will still get yoked from it because the one advantage is that they typically hold it for longer periods of time and do multiple work sets. It's also less axially fatiguing. So that's an accessory you can and should mix in, especially for GPP. But the point is, your traps are one of the strongest muscles in the human body, and they grow well through just being pulled on. That's a fucking fact. And if we know that they can naturally tolerate over 700 pounds of stretch, then what makes you think lifting light dumbbells will give you monster level traps? Good luck. It's probably not happening unless you have amazing genetics. And the general failure rate from what I've seen is super high, but not with this approach. I would also throw in cheat rows for the mid traps and total back thickness, which completes your yoke. But for this segment, I really wanted to emphasize having thick muscles surrounding the head, which keeps most lifters looking scrawny. Remember, smaller lifters who are yoked can often look bigger than those who have more total muscle mass. It is the strongest illusion, which is why I ranked it as number 1. Continuing with this idea of getting your upper area around the head bigger, what's the next muscle that falls down which broadens your physique? The side delts. And also the rear delts, which add to your 3D look. You can actually see them from the front when they're huge, especially if you're doing curls or you're bending forward a bit, or some tall guy's looking down on you. But the point is, even if we're not talking about building muscle, those with longer clavicles typically look bigger than those with narrow clavicles, of which you have no control of. But you do have control over the muscles that sit at the tip of your clavicles, being the shoulders. And luckily, they're the biggest muscles in the upper body, which many people don't even know about, but it's true. They have insane progression potential, and you can get them so big that no one would ever know that you didn't have a big frame. Like your boy. I absolutely do not have a wide structure or a narrow waist, yet I'm known for being wide. Now, the most important measurement for looking big is your shoulder to waist ratio. And the standard I settled on was your upper body circumference being 20 inches bigger than your waist. That's the minimum. So if you have a 30-inch waist, if you were to take a tape measure and wrap it around your torso, it should be 50 inches, which is not the same as your chest measurement. This usually scales to about 43 to 46 inches, which is realistic for average and shorter height men. And taller guys can easily surpass 50 inches in width. I'm sure your suit size would confirm this, but remember, it has to scale with your waist to look right. So if you're barrel mode with a 35-inch waist, then you'll need 55 inches on top. But with that added body fat and being yoked, now you're gonna look like a broad, scary motherfucker. Even if your chest is flat, and if your legs suck, call it the V-taper of the gods. That's full-on Johnny Bravo mode, which I don't condone, but it is a card you can pull. Anyway, you can't be built like a pear. You need wide shoulders. Your delts should cap outside of your upper arm, even when you're not flexing. And your torso should look like an inverted pyramid. That and being yoked beats everything, because it gives you the frame. Of course, the front delts won't add to your width, so you need to bias the side and rear delts. I would even recommend being an overhead press specialist for at least a year. Treat horizontal pressing as the accessory to your vertical pressing, not the other way around. Stop being a bench bro, become an OHP bro. Viewing the OHP as a competition lift. And you should think about carryover in the opposite sense. So you do a close grip bench press because you know it's going to improve your vertical pressing strength. And you should probably open up your push workouts with a vertical press. Flip the order around. Speaking of which, the best way to do this for our goal of being as broad as possible is to primarily press in the frontal plane, which usually features a wider grip with flared elbows, of which the best exercise is unquestionably the behind the neck press, which forces this movement pattern. Please watch this full guide for a complete overview, because I expose a lot of the myths regarding its so-called danger risk. But to keep it basic, I would recommend the same grip width as your bench press, being on the wider side. So either thumb away from the smooths or one finger on the rings are amazing starting points. And make sure to keep your head straight, not rounded forward. Then slowly bring the bar all the way down to your upper traps, maintaining back tightness exactly like a high bar squat. Try to spread the bar apart. Hold the bottom for a brief second, then explode up with the elbows staying out for the best lateral delt recruitment, and most importantly, vertical bar path. You can also do this on the Smith if you really want to get this nailed. You can also do an optional shrug at the top for complete scapular rotation and shoulder mobility gains. Especially if you're standing, you should do this. And for variation, you can even try out the buffalo bar to get a deeper way to stretch. Plus, having your hands slightly diagonal is generally easier on your mobility, despite the increased range of motion. But always take it slowly. I found that most guys get the best results with a weight that ranges between 95 pounds and 135 pounds. You probably don't have to go heavier. And in general, this is a finesse movement that is best done with moderate to higher repetitions, like 8 to 12 or 10 to 15. Some guys even do 15 to 20 when they're really scared. That's the approach for the lowest injury risk and efficiency for the side delts. And remember, this specific form should be the default for all frontal plane vertical presses. So if you prefer doing the dumbbell alternative, which if you keep your elbows out, will do the exact same thing, just that there's no bar restriction to guarantee that there's no forward deviation, don't ego lift. And make sure the bench angle is set to 90 degrees, completely vertical. We do not want this to become the AD press, which is a goated exercise in its own right, and superior for the front delts as well as the upper chest, but not the side delts. For that, you want an upright torso, which either means standing up, sitting down without back support, or the back support is locked in at the highest angle on your bench for maximum stability. It also means that the classic OHB is yet another terrific option that should absolutely be rotated in. So that's all you got to do for vertical pressing. They do work the side delts, especially with the correct angles and bar path. But of course, compound movements are not enough, and your side delts can never be too big. You will be wise to include at least one isolation exercise per workout, preferably 2 to 3 times a week. For the side delts, I'm a big fan of power raises given the shortened resistance curve of the normal dumbbell version, which, let's be honest, 99% of you will choose as your default because it is the most convenient option. You grab the dumbbells and knock out some sets in no time. It's time proven, guarantees gains, and the latest data shows it to be equally effective as the more complex cable variations. So start with the basic goal of doubling your lateral raise strength. If you're currently repping 15 to 20 pounds, work up to 30 to 35 pounds over several years. Yeah, I never said this was going to be a fast process. Lateral raises are notoriously slow at adding plus ones. It's normal, and the weight does tend to plateau around the zone I'm talking about, especially if you have a large wingspan, which increases the moment arm. So that's probably all the weight you'll ever need. Very few lifters need to go above that in a strict way, especially with longer arms. But if you do want to overload, then lifting 40 to 50 pounds with some body English is the next level up. This ensures that your form isn't complete garbage. The secret is in doing no more than 30 to 40% of what you can lift with textbook form, which may sound like a high number, but the ratio scales smaller given the low absolute load. So start by mastering the basic lateral raises. Like the old just get strong bro advice is not bad here. That's probably what you need to hear the most right now. To stay focused on what's always mattered most. Progressive overload and being patient with the process. I also prefer slightly higher reps of 10 to 15, which makes the 5-pound jumps less jarring and ensures that most of your repetitions leading up to failure were not as sloppy. As for the rear delts, if your gym has a good reverse pec deck, use that for the highest loading potential and stability. Otherwise, the next best option is the chest expander pull apart, which I got even better gains with. It transformed my rear delts from a relatively normal body part to a strong dominant area, which I didn't even expect. Now, the basic horizontal pull apart is best for the rear delts since there's less total back involvement. Vertical is getting some more teres in there, as is laying down on a bench or floor for maximum stability and correcting scapular imbalances. Start by maxing your 5-spring chest expander for 12 to 15 reps and you'll probably be good enough. And that process might take you a year. The next goal is repping 7 springs, and the elite level is going beyond with the addition of super springs or garage door springs. So in total, we're looking at least a 3-year journey. Now, if you only have dumbbells, then I would highly recommend reverse flies off a 30-degree incline bench. You'll be surprised how strong you can get. In my experience, whatever you can power raise, you can also lift strictly with your rear delts. It tends to be a slightly stronger muscle because they contribute quite a bit to your rowing performance. So they should be 1-to-1 if you ask me, which will not only protect your shoulders from all the risky exercises you're doing, but also round out all the divisions, of which there are more than 3, but I won't get into that today. I would argue that your shoulders will never have that 3D look unless your rear delts are big. They're mandatory for separating them from the arms, and it makes a physique stand out since most lifters are super lazy with them and consequently end up with shoulder injuries. Number 3, make most of your pulling exercises lat biased. So we've addressed the most important aspect of the yoke, which gives you that meaty bulldog look. But at the end of the day, if your torso just looks like a fridge, you lack that superhero look, which primarily comes from having huge lats. This is what will make your waist look even smaller, and it must be prioritized for those who are not genetically blessed. Having flared cobra lats literally changes the way you walk and where your arms naturally fall. This makes a difference when you're doing dumbbell alternate curls, just to say. And it becomes as if you're holding 2 large suitcases. Of course, you don't want imaginary lat syndrome, but if your armpits are literally pushing out against your arms, then they will sit wider, thus affecting your leverages forever. And that is what you want. The maximum width that your build allows for. you can never be too wide. So when it comes to vertical and horizontal pulls, double down on the lats. You will already get thick from the yoke training, and all rows still build your upper back well. Remember, we're not isolating the lats, we're just biasing them, and your scapula can retract just fine regardless of what's happening at the upper arm. But most importantly, the easiest way to develop bat wings is with weighted pull-up specialization. If you just get strong at pull-ups, you'll probably end up with a super wide back, as many calisthenics athletes can attest to, often being wide but lacking thickness, since they typically don't do hip hinges or many horizontal pulls. But we're doing that here, so you're covered. Now, my classic standard is repping a total weight, which includes your body weight plus your external weight. You want to do 300 pounds for 5 repetitions. So if you weigh 200, you should be able to rep 100 pounds, or about 2 plates. I urge you to raise your standards. It's sad because many of you can eventually do this if you train long enough, and it simplifies the whole process of getting wide. It's also why certain lightweight calisthenics athletes don't have big backs, because the total weight is usually far under that. In other words, if you're 140 pounds repping 2 plates, that's only 230 pounds total. That won't cut it. And a guy who weighs that and just does bodyweight pull-ups almost always has a bigger back. So it's not about pound for pound strength. That's where the so-called hard gainers mess up. And they're like, oh, I got strong at pull-ups and my back wasn't as wide as yours. Well, you didn't. You're not strong enough. Yeah, I'm pulling that card. You failed to reach the recommended standard. But I'll tell you, the same lightweight who can rep 3.5 plates will have amazing lats. That's the distinction. You can only be massive if your relative strength is literally through the roof. But if you're matching what guys normally do and they got 50, 60 pounds body weight on you, then I'm sorry, it's not the same. And the same applies for higher reps. If you're between 180 and 200 pounds doing 20 body weight pull-ups, that is an excellent display of strength, because it's like a 150 to 160 pound guy repping a plate for 20, which most people will be somewhat impressed with. Similarly, if you don't weigh much, but you can easily rep out 15 to 20 reps, then guess what? You'll stay small. So to guarantee a wide back from pull-ups, we must bring it back to the absolute load, not relative strength, unless you're willing to put up super lean numbers. And regarding the variation and grip, I don't have to talk much about that because you should be rotating through all of them anyway to reduce overuse and make your training less redundant. But for the lats specifically, as a default, I would recommend not doing a dead hang to keep tension on the lats and reduce humeral elevation, where the lats have the best leverage, with around a shoulder width or medium grip, either neutral or underhand being your base variation, where you're tucking your arms by your side, trying to get the best squeeze on the lats. And I also like pausing at the top, as well as mixing in the super wide variation, which is the opposite. Now, you bring your elbows directly from origin to insertion, following the fibers since the lats attach to the spine. If that's all you did, width is honestly covered. That is the simplest, dummy-proof way of building a wide back. Let's just stay focused on getting strong at basic weighted pull-ups. So alternate grips every pull workout. And if you're doing lat pull downs right after, make sure it's the opposing grip. So workout A could be neutral grip pull-ups and super wide grip pull downs, and workout B, super wide grip pull-ups and neutral grip pull downs. Flip them around and you're all set. As for your rows, the easiest hack is to row with tucked elbows. Never use a wide, flared arm path, since we're pulling the sagittal plane. Remember, it is a horizontal pull, so the biomechanics are different. Always be shoulder width apart, and preferably with an underhand or neutral grip, where you're naturally pulling low towards the belly button or hips. I don't care about the implement. I like easy bars for comfort, the Omni bar, and of course, dumbbells, which best allow you to adjust in real time. You can row with or without chest support. Again, that's not the deciding factor here. It all depends how axially fatigued you are from the yoke training. I say the arm path is what's most important. So let's end it there. Make your rows more lats and less upper back with every opportunity you have. As a bonus, and adding on to this idea of maximizing your width, thus giving the illusion of a smaller waist, there's also the silver era concept of building up your ribcage for vacuum posing. The objective is to have your ribcage protrude way past your tummy in order to look significantly leaner, especially if you're doing a front double biceps pose or a side chest pose, and you don't have the best ab genetics, definition, or naturally small waist. The best exercise to achieve this old school look is the original dumbbell pullover, where you're laying across the bench for the deepest thorax stretch. I made a full tutorial covering the benefits and form cues, so I won't repeat that here, but I do consider it to be an essential exercise for maximizing your V-taper. So vacuum into the negative, make sure you're in a crescent formation with the glutes below the torso for the deepest stretch, and vacuum as you descend the weight behind your head with relatively straight arms. That's for lats. A good starting goal is working up to 70 to 80 pounds for 8. And this is best done on upper body days, since pullovers build a lot. The lats and teres major tie-in, which widen you like crazy, the thorax and serratus for that Frank Zane effect, as well as the long head of the triceps for sheer mass. Which brings me on to my next tip. Number 4, bias the long head of the triceps. So everybody wants big arms, but many lifters are rather strong at close grip bench, curls, and chin-ups, yet lack that meatiness when in a relaxed state. Or they know others who are weaker than them who somehow spot freakier arms. How is that possible? Well, it boils down to one muscle that makes or breaks you, the long head of the triceps. Even if your biceps genetics suck, or you don't have the best lateral head definition, if your long head is sweep, just hanging off like a bloated up chicken wing that's been pumped with who knows what, then you automatically look way bigger. It's the one muscle that, when developed, almost looks like you have synthol in your arms, since it's a big chunk of mass that sticks out. The long head is what improves your arm measurement the most. It's the biggest head of the triceps, as well as improving your side profile since it literally widens your arm from the back, in addition to looking like you have big arms when you're turned around. It's not the biceps that'll do that, which, by the way, pairs beautifully with the lats, because if you're wide, your long head will squish up against your lats, which makes both look even bigger. It's like when you were a kid and you'd press your hand up against your arm. Same thing here. And in general, your long head and lats are sort of level with each other. So when the long head is big, it almost makes it look like you have a second pair of lats. It literally adds to your width. Check out this classic C.T. Fletcher photo to see what I mean. He didn't have the best lats. They were actually a lagging body part for him, yet he still looked wide from the back. So if you have high lat insertions or a long torso, building up your long head might be the way out to your so-called bad genetics. The fact is, even if you have a big back, if the back side of your arms are small, something looks off. Ironically, the best long head exercises also have the potential for taking the lats on as well. So they're kind of brothers and sisters. Like when you do pullovers, you hit the long head and the lats. So there's a connection there. Anyway, the best way to build it is with any exercise that includes shoulder extension, because the long head is the only head that attaches to the scapula. When you do a press, it inhibits that, similar to how squatting shuts off the rectus femoris. This is due to shoulder flexion because the long head is a shoulder extensor. So antagonist motions shut it off. The only press that might not do that are heavy weighted dips, where the lockout is challenged, especially when using bands and chains, as well as bench dips, since there's isometric tension when the arms are straighter. Maybe even the close grip behind the neck press, as it sort of mimics an overhead extension. So long as the shoulder isn't moving into flexion, you will work the long head. Which means close grip benching is off the menu, at least for this purpose. So that's why you getting 3 plates and above didn't do shit for your arm size. So really, the best way to build your long head is with isolation work. Do not be lazy here, or you'll spend years trying to correct this. Take it from me. You can and should bias your long head from day one. I don't care if your whole arm is small. This is worth it. And there's 2 ways to do this. Number 1 is to include any pullover motion, preferably with bent arms to get the best stretch. I like using a close easy bar for triceps, but even the classic dumbbell version will work just fine. Number 2 is to either lock your upper arm to where the long head stays maximally stretched at all times, or moving in and out of the stretch, which turns it into a hybrid lift, what's often been described as a skull over or pullover extension, which has the added benefit of being easier on the elbows. Examples of this would be the rolling dumbbell extension, skull crushers done behind the head from any angle, not to the forehead, and of course, the king is any overhead extension which features maximum lengthening of that long head. I say rotate through all of them. So long as your elbows are up and back, you're good. We can also improve our push downs for more long head, where there's also 2 methods. Number 1 is that you keep everything completely stationary and extend behind your body, or your arms being very close to your side, so there's no pressing inhibition. So it's kind of like an isolated dip, especially if you use dual ropes or dual cables, forcing shoulder extension. And number 2, if you allow the elbows to come up a bit at the top, that recruits your long head similar to a pullover. Both can work, but I definitely prefer the first choice to better standardize technique with less cheating, which is typically more elbow friendly, since you drastically have to cut down the weight and there's no momentum. I prefer to include shoulder motion on extensions and pullovers, and to keep my push downs strict. That's how I blend it, but you do you. Plus, extensions just feel right when you have more freedom of movement. But that's all you need to know. It's actually not complicated to build your long head. It's just neglected and takes time. Ending with number 5. If you want to look big in all general conditions, then you need caps on your body fat percentage. On the higher end, if you're bear mode, do not exceed 20% body fat, or else that extra cushion works to your detriment. You end up with no muscular definition, just looking like a big, soft baby. Your silhouette will most certainly feature a thicker waist, which worsens your shoulder to waist ratio and makes it almost impossible to have your shoulders be plus 20 inches above your waist, the standard I talked about before. Because if you have a 40-inch waist, good luck having a 60-inch upper body circumference. That's practically enhanced territory. Also, say goodbye to your vascularity, as well as hiding all separation between your muscles. Now, if all you wear is long sleeves, oversized tees, and hoodies, plus you have a huge beard and you're yoked to the max, then that's a very intimidating look for sure. And that might be the biggest natural state that your genetics can allow for. But you're limited to specific conditions. You will not look your best in normal clothes, a tank top, and especially shirtless. So if you prefer being bulked up, I've always said that 15 to 20% is the optimal zone, which maintains an okay level of leanness with the added leverages, the +1 shirt size, and +1 or 2 inches of size in some muscles, while keeping a washboard tummy. You should never look bloated from the side. And if you do need to cut, it won't be more than about 30 pounds. And even that might be stretching it if I'm being honest. The truth is, no one should be doing 50-pound cuts. That is very hard on the body, and it takes a good 6 months to pull off, which risks losing muscle mass and is straight up difficult. So not only should you cap your body fat and have weight limits, but so should you have waist size limits. I found that not surpassing 35 inches is a perfect way of keeping you in check, ensuring you have just the right amount of fluff. And the secret to staying in this sweet spot is that once you found your perfect body weight, just compare it to weight classes in strength sports. For example, if you're lean competing at 181 and you want to bulk up, then you should cap your weight to 198, the next class up. This way, you never gain more than 20 pounds. Usually it'll average to be 15 pounds, which forces a deliberately slower, leaner, even cleaner cut. So no dirty bulking. And of course, this makes it effortless to go up and down weight class. You should never be 2 classes ahead of your ideal weight. That is how you avoid yo-yo dieting throughout the year, and it incentivizes mini cuts rather than long cuts. Speaking of which, and now addressing the opposite lifter, if you do prefer being aesthetic or lean year-round, you need to find the lowest body fat that you can sustain without looking small and close. That's the trick. That's usually at the last 5 to 10 pounds mark of a cut. Once it starts to get uncomfortable and some side effects kick in, that's when you stop the cut and you maintain that physique. A good standard I created was the height to weight ratio, where the optimal body fat is usually matching your height in centimeters to your body weight in pounds. For example, if you're 180 centimeters and have put on your first 20 pounds of muscle, so you're a late intermediate or early advanced lifter, then your optimal lean body weight is 180 pounds. 180 centimeters, 180 pounds. That's what I found to be true after years of observing top naturals who cut down, which for most of you will land you between 10 and 12% body fat. Some can dip into high single digits, but going further below is too risky. You will only look better with your clothes off or flexing with a pump. But in all clothing situations, with the exception of stringers, you'll look significantly smaller. Some people may even assume that you don't even lift. And you'll probably have to buy an entire new wardrobe if you go down that path. Otherwise, you'll suffer from the tent look. I have a set of pants that are only worn at single digit body fat, or else I constantly have to wear a belt and it sags around my behind. So if you don't want to constantly tailor your waist, raise your arm cuffs, or tuck in baggy shirts, then don't allow yourself to lose too much weight. Excess fabric makes you look like a child trying to wear his father's clothing. The point is, you don't want to look sickly and depleted, especially since many of the outer extremity muscles that make you look naturally enhanced tend to shrink the most when you get shredded. So if your yoke severely shrinks, then it doesn't matter that you can see all the striations between your delts and chest. At the end of the day, you look smaller if you're walking around, just living your life. Plus, it's hard to maintain, worsens your hormonal profile. Just to say, competitive natural bodybuilders often have the testosterone levels of old men, as proven in the research. You'll have less muscular fullness, less strength, with the exception of some calisthenic skills, smaller measurements, gaunt fish face, lower energy, and are most likely to rebound out, which will make you look worse than if you just stayed at a reasonable body fat. So be sustainably lean or moderately fluffy. Any extreme ironically makes you look smaller. Remember, bodybuilding is nothing more than an illusion. If you develop the correct muscles and are mindful of your body fat, then you will appear bigger than you actually are. You don't need elite strength and all the compound movements in order to look massive. Your proportions are oftentimes more important. You must treat your body like a statue, working with your genetic strengths and weaknesses, while emphasizing the muscles that make the most difference in your physique, which most lifters aren't thinking about. They're into general hypertrophy training, so you don't need drugs, and I hope that this guide changed your perspective. Now, let me know if there's more illusion strategies that I may have missed, and if you want more videos just like this, post your comments down below. And I'll talk to you guys next time.